This podcast is brought to you by Hills Community Aid and has been funded by Castle Hill RSL. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Good Men Don't podcast. In this podcast, we're talking about what is a respectful relationship, and we also talk about domestic violence around the area and in society today. Today, we'll be talking about a story of hope, and we'll be chatting with a reformed abuser. Now, when I heard about this, I was thinking to myself how hard it would be to come forth and recognise, if you are an abuser and coming forth, what are the ramifications? Does it cascade? Does it get worse? Does it get better? And those are some of the things I really questioned. But here with us, speaking about it with me, is my co-host, Warren. What are your thoughts on the situation?
Thank you, Levi. One thing that really comes to my mind more than anything else, and we talk about a story of hope. The guest we have today, the male guest who was an abuser, now reformed. I first heard him probably 8-9 years ago, and he was speaking at a Lisa Harnham Foundation fundraiser, from memory, and they didn't really introduce the guest. He just arrived on stage with two other people, and I thought, what's happening here? And then they said, Rob, will you take the microphone? So he took the microphone. His very first words were, I am an abuser. You could hear at that point in time a pin drop.
Wow.
But then he went on to talk about how he became aware of his abusive habits and what he was doing, and then sought help. And then changed and became a reformed abuser. And I think that's the story of hope that I want to get across today, is that men can change. If you have a tendency towards violence or tendency towards abuse, then you can change. It takes a lot of work. And Deb, I'll get you to talk about that later on, because I know that you've written about that. But that potential is there. So it's a great story of hope today. Yeah. So let's get into the conversation. Let's get a chance of seeing what this is all about. So our guests today are Rob Sanasi and Deb Sanasi. Is that the right pronunciation? Yep. Okay. Thank you. And it's great to have you here. The thing that most people don't know at this stage is that these two people were married and are still married, and they've gone through an enormous upheaval in their life when Rob was abusing Deb. And I think that's actually a tremendous thing. So let me say hello. Thank you for your time. Great to be here. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, Rob? We'll go to you first, if you don't mind. Just give us a pen picture of just who you are and what are the things that you're really engaged and enthusiastic about.
Things I'm enthusiastic about. I used to be enthusiastic about more things, but probably the wrong things,
Sure.
Yeah. Not that this is relevant necessarily, but it could be. I'm 62 now, and when I was 55, I got diagnosed with ADHD, which I didn't know for 55 years. So, looking back on that. Firstly, has that got anything to do with being abusive? Not really, but in my case, it put a lot of hyper-focus into the things that I was enthusiastic about and seeking dopamine, Sure. And, in that, 6 or 7 year period now that I've got this information, I looked at, when you're dysfunctional, which I was, any kind of abuse is a dysfunction, a big one. And then another layer on top of that is looking for dopamine in all the wrong places. And those two together was a pretty harsh recipe for destruction. Also a lot of good things, but I must say, a lot of people say, well, you did really good, you did really well in business, or you did this, or you did that. I've had lots of this and lots of that. However, the regrets far outweigh any positives, in my opinion. So it is good to be here, but I'd rather not be here telling this story. You know, I'd rather be saying, hey, you know, I'm an astronaut or some crap like that, you know, not our story. But look, you know, these days my number one enthusiasm is Deb, isn't it? You come home at night, Deb's a counsellor, and, you know, which means she works out of hours quite a bit. She comes home and I'm like, oh, you're home. You came back, you know, and we kind of do that every night. And it's not a ritual or anything. I'm really honoured that she keeps coming home, you know, and not because she shouldn't, but really, you know, we've been married 35 years now. And for the first 15, I was abusing my wife. And so really she shouldn't be with me at all. I mean, that's more than enough grounds to, you know, get rid of an abuser. Well, get rid of any abuser, whether it's, you know, a marital or not. So, you know, my blessing today is Deb and our kids, you know, our family, our, you know, tight-knit family and friends, and, you know, we just love relationships. I think looking back at my own life, I valued things and tasks and achievements a lot more than relationships. But, you know, the process we've had is completely the other way around now. I don't care what I drive, where I live, what I do. As long as I'm with them, I'm good.
I think, Rob, the thing that you didn't mention there is the work you do, spreading the word about being prepared to talk about you were an abuser. And I think that's so important, to find someone who's got the courage and the strength to stand up and talk about it. And we don't have enough people that we can actually learn from. So, you know, for me, that's a really important thing of what you do. So thank you for that. Deb, how about you? What's the sort of things that are important to you these days?
Similarly to Rob, I value relationships. That's a no-brainer. I think if your relationships are healthy, I guess what I've learnt along my trajectory is there's a difference between a relationship and a healthy relationship. Definitely, so having healthy relationships is so enriching. I think it's everything. You know, and somehow, by the grace of God, our families stayed intact through all of this. And the kids are grown up now. They were 11 and 13 when we went into crisis, which is no age is good for the kids, but somehow we've all navigated it quite beautifully, I think, and have strong relationships today, which we appreciate, you know. So.
I was just going to further point out, it was quite strong what you were sharing, Rob, but now on your side of things, it comes, I feel, a lot more strength in having to deal in that situation, being around it all and still coming out in quite a positive aspect where now you're both talking about it, have come, but like you've both, I guess, navigated through the issue with kids, with everything around you. And I think, Deb, what you've done, how you've gone about it is really just amazing. Can you talk more, I guess, about how your feelings during that time, how it was impacting you in those 15 years?
The first 15 years?
Yeah, that would have been tough. Now, you know, we get to see you guys look lovely together, but it wasn't rainbows and sunshines from what Rob was saying.
I think the important thing to know about our story, because I do think it's very similar to a lot of women, is that it was definitely not clear that it was abuse.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think back to the 90s and the mid-noughties or the 2000s, actually I would say up until Rosie Batty became Australian of the Year, which was about 2016, I think, there was not really a lot of conversation around the non-physical forms of abuse.
Yeah.
So most people's view of domestic violence was a black eye on a poster somewhere or on TV. Yeah. And if it wasn't a black eye or it wasn't physical, then it wasn't talked about. Yep. So during the first 15 years of marriage, I would say the climate of our relationship was very power imbalanced when I look back at it. Yeah. Everything seemed to revolve around Rob and his needs, but it didn't come back the other way. Yeah. So it wasn't, many women will tell you it's a bit like boiling the frog. When you get into the relationship, the water's tepid.
Yeah.
But over the years, this just dynamic was quite clear as I look back. Very obviously, it was all about Rob. Rob had all the power. He made all the decisions, and I was expected to go along with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry if I interrupted you there.
No, you're right.
I'd like to go back a little bit further, if I can, Rob, to you. I guess in those sort of early days of your relationship, were there any signs, I guess, that, in thinking back, that were signs of your controlling behaviours emerging?
In my own opinion?
Yep.
Of myself?
Yep.
No.
Okay.
No, like I was just in, I don't know, like a bit like the Roadrunner.
Right.
I don't know, probably a lot of young people don't know who the Roadrunner is. He's just
Yep.
doing his thing and running and
Yep.
going where he wants, doing what he wants, and no real regard, not only for Deb, that was the worst thing, but, even in business or anywhere else, I really wasn't, I didn't have the ability really to empathise, sympathise. It was all about me, and that's all I knew. That was my whole life, and that's all I can remember being like. And I'll tell you just a quick thing. Maybe you don't want to hear it here, but I remember, and when we were trying to, rise above this and get healed and so on for me, and then after that, Deb, I remember going to a minister and for prayer, and he looked at me and he said, what I can see around you, the whole way around you, are mirrors. And I was like, wow. So I could see myself at every angle, no matter where I turned.
Yep.
Right. And for me, that's not good at every angle, right? But it was quite insightful. If there's mirrors all the way around you, wherever you look, there's no one beyond that mirror. It's just you all the time. And I'll tell you exactly what he did. He said, Jesus, go in and break all those mirrors. And just softly, just like that, no razzmatazz. And we left that day, and that was part of what we were doing. We were throwing in the kitchen sink at this, right? Yeah. That was part of it. And that day, a lot of things changed. And all of a sudden, I could see Deb, I could see my kids better, I could see other relationships. And, if in fact an abuser, not just me, but let's just say I've dealt with a lot of abusive men over the years now, right? Well over 100, one-on-one, and we're all the same.
Yeah.
We're all the same.
Yep.
We're all, the only thing we can see is ourselves. So we don't really have a hope, really, of, recognising any dysfunction, because that's just the way we are. And I know that sounds like, well, it's not our fault. It is it's our responsibility to do something about it. How that originates is another story. But, not having mirrors all the way around, all of a sudden you see relationships. You see, I didn't think I had any friends. Yeah. Deb goes, you've got lots of friends, and then all of a sudden there's no mirrors around. You can see them. I could see Deb. I could see our kids clearer. I could see everything, So that was the part of the beginning of having eyes to see.
So, Deb, from your point of view, what was your sense of the relationship? How did it feel like at that time?
Pre the
yes.
crisis?
Yes.
Look, it's when I look back at those 90s, it was basically the 90s and the first half of the 2000s, we were also in a Christian community, and the church we were in at the time was very much, wives submit to your husbands kind of church culture. In terms of, so in some ways I felt it was hard because I didn't feel like I was getting much support. But the community around me seemed to almost condone that.
Yeah.
Concept that the husband's the head of the house and it's all about him and he gets to make all the decisions. Yeah. So that again was cloaking it, if that makes sense, that made it, and the fact that in the community we weren't talking about emotional abuse. So it was almost a bit of a setup to enable this dynamic to continue as it was. So very much I managed I did everything in the home. I managed the kids. Rob was building business. I was supporting him. But he would come home and be demanding and uncaring and, controlling everything. And it was hard to discern that was dysfunctional because of the community I was in.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Definitely.
That does. Rob, I'm thinking a little bit about what you were talking about before, and that meeting with the priest or the pastor. Was that a significant point? The way you described it sounded really, or was there other significant times when you sort of realised, hey, I have an issue, I have a problem?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you the beginning of it all, right? As far as I was concerned, everything was going really well, right?
When you were in control.
Everything was going my way.
Awesome. It was really
who
awesome.
wants to change, right?
Yeah.
And then Deb, and I'll tell you honestly, if it wasn't for Deb, I would still be the same arsehole that I was back then.
Okay. But that, for me, that flags a question in my mind, I guess, in terms of you. Were you seeing red flags in terms of that, and says, hey, there's a problem here, or was it just the fact that...
Do you know, it's over those 15 years, it was hard. And he would, anyone that's familiar with the cycle of abuse, Rob's cycle was spread out.
Yeah.
Like some poor women I counsel have daily cycles with their partners. Rob's was like months apart. Right. So, in the first few years of the marriage, when he would have an angry explosion, I just thought, he's losing his temper. I didn't understand that it was a cycle. I didn't understand any of that. Yeah. What was your question? I was going to give you a really good answer.
Did you I guess, I see any red flags, any warning signs that...
I just knew it was hard. And everybody would joke about Rob being a control freak.
Yes.
And the point I was going to make is I didn't just suffer silently. I was like, this is I'm finding this really hard. Yeah. I went to my pastor. They didn't pick it. Yeah. They were just like, go home and read more books. Actually, they'd tell us both to read books, but only I would read the books.
Yeah.
We went to counsellors a few times. They missed it. And I have a psychology degree when I left school. They didn't talk about DV at all.
No.
Really?
And even when I went to do my master's in the late 2000s, they didn't even talk about it. I mean, hopefully these days the courses have changed.
Yeah, that view is so common amongst victims, I think, is they just don't see it coming. And there's a friend of ours, and I was talking to her probably about 12 months ago, maybe, when I first started to become involved in doing some research. And she left her husband probably 35 years ago, and he was essentially emotional abuse and also financial abuse. But she never saw it coming until suddenly there was a crisis.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Until we went into crisis, and Rob was starting to say the reason we went into crisis is because I got offered a job in about 2006. And I'd never worked outside the home. I mean, I had done a lot of work within the home. But, again, I think, and this is what I find too in my practice, if a woman is not doing a lot of things that press the control buttons, what I mean is if she's at home raising kids and she's where he knows where she is, sometimes the control can be undetected in an obvious way. But as soon as she starts trying, often what happens is what happened to me. The kids grow up a bit, you think, I'm going to go and work now and do this and do something for myself. Suddenly that presses the control buttons because I'm not just at home anymore doing where he knows I am, if that makes sense. Suddenly I'm gaining independence, which threatens a controller because I'm not there to control. So that's what happened in our case. I stepped into the workforce and Rob had a nervous breakdown very quickly, within weeks.
Yeah.
And at that stage, we still didn't know that this was DV. We still didn't know why he'd had a breakdown. But he went in to see a counsellor at that point, again by the grace of God, who was a DV counsellor.
Yeah.
And he picked it in the first session.
At that point, it is interesting. I had a conversation with my brother, actually, and he posed a good point where he said, when is it abuse or domestic violence to just getting angry or getting annoyed or, upset with your partner? Because obviously people can get upset at their partner. It's communication here and there. But when is it a problem? And that's, I think, what you're saying. You didn't know it was a problem. When does it cross over to that line? And it sounds like there was a lot of education or lack of education. You were saying in your degree you didn't really learn about this. And, going forth, being in that kind of area, you wouldn't really think too much about it. Would you say there's a bit of an education aspect where if you had a bit more, you could have seen the signs earlier before it became a bit of a problem? Because I like the analogy you used, the frog in the boiling water. Yeah. I think I've butchered that a little bit.
No, that's great.
But it is just that slow progression, and then, it's too late, or, it reaches a certain point where it's like, wow, this is a really big problem. Do you think if you had a bit more education, or both of you had a bit more education? You mentioned you were diagnosed with ADHD earlier on, or not even that early ago. Do you think if you knew a little bit more, you would have been able to process, well, wait a second, I am doing this. This aligns with, I guess, my ADHD. I should go about things differently. Do you think if both of you had a bit more understanding? Or?
I think the way our story happened is the way it was meant to happen, because when Rob, to answer your first question, Levi, abuse is different from anger because it's about power and control. Yeah. So it's not just anger; it's one person attempting to dominate and have power over the other. So it usually extends beyond anger. Yeah. To decision making, finance, freedom, social independence. Yeah. So it's the climate of a relationship where one person attempts to have power and control over the other. Yeah. And in our case, when the light went on, I looked back over the 15 years and I was like, well, this is in every area of our relationship. Yeah. Yeah. If I'd have discovered this earlier, whilst Rob was in his entitled kind of in control state, grandiose, he would have just laughed at me. Right. Thankfully he had a nervous breakdown. Thankfully he had a nervous breakdown. So he was in 1,000 pieces on the floor when the counsellor said to him, Rob, do you know what you're doing? Do you know what this is? And because Rob was so shattered at that point, he was receptive. But if a guy is big and in control and, still in control, he usually isn't open to suggestions, I find. Yeah. Would you agree?
Yeah.
So just with that, your story, you had a bit of an epiphany with the mirrors surrounding you, and, you just needed to tear it down. It's going to be different for everyone. You're saying all abusers are the same. However, getting to the stage where you're at now, the epiphany, it works differently, I assume. What would you say is a good way men can go about, I guess, reaching this epiphany or this kind of solution?
Well, I think two things about that. If I look at all the men that I've, I suppose had some kind of relationship with, Deb might have been counselling the victim and so on, and she's preparing to leave or so on. There's only two ways that I've seen for any kind of change to happen. Is what happened to me, regardless of the process, mirrors or not, is you're about to lose everything. Mm-hmm. So that some crisis happens. Yeah. There's no crisis, you're still going to do what you do because a giraffe acts like a giraffe an elephant like an elephant and an abuser like an abuser.
Yeah.
It's the zoo, right? So you can't expect a giraffe to act like an elephant. So if you're an abuser, there's something driving that, driving you, right? And so that's one. You've got to hit a crisis. And so that's the beginning. That's not necessarily any changing. Then you've got a fork in the road, you know? Do I go overseas and do I get divorced and she's making me do this and blaming everyone else, and go overseas and, you know, go get a wife that's half her age and doesn't ask any questions, and then, you know, that's another life of, you know, that you could choose. Or you go down the other fork and it's like, okay, you know, I'm having, you know, this breakdown for a reason.
Yeah.
There's something really wrong with me.
Yeah.
You know, and you go and pursue that, and that is a harder road. But in the end, it's not a harder road, because the price of discipline, which will end up being discipline, is short term, but regret lasts forever. You know, and if I left Deb because she was pressing my buttons, and then I had another wife and I did the same, and I left her. I got kids everywhere. I got Christmases everywhere. I got birthdays everywhere. It's hell.
Yeah.
You know, it would be total hell. That's regret every single day, and you pay for that for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And so I had a pretty good sense that would have been my life. I had visions of me in a little caravan somewhere. It would have been a cool one. But I mean, you know, some of those little silver ones.
Yeah.
But still, it would have been a pathetic life. But so back then, I still didn't have the empathy to understand what I'd really put Deb through. It was still about me.
Yeah.
Back then, even when that fork,
Mirrors were still up.
they're still up at that point. But I remember at one point, I prayed.
Yeah. I think it's all right, Rob. I'm glad. You know,
Maybe just while Deb, just
And I asked God to show me the pain that I'd caused her.
yeah. So I'm
Man, this one prayer hit came through with, you know, quickly, and I started to feel it, like even physically, you know.
Yeah.
And
So the sense I've got, Rob, from what you've been saying, is that you were just having a great time. You know, there was no control issues from your point of view. You were just being you. But Deb, you were interpreting this as control, maybe, as it could slowly move down the track. Is that right? Is that what I'm hearing?
Up until he came back from that first counselling session, to be honest with you, I thought I was being, in the Christian world, a good wife.
Yep.
You know, and there's a lot of good Christian women that think that, you know, well, we are called to be forgiving, but that's the message, is just, you know, forgive him, be long-suffering, you know, it's okay if he leads.
It'll work out eventually.
You know, so until he came back from that first counselling session, I was struggling, but I thought I was being a godly wife.
Yeah.
I didn't understand what I was in.
Yeah. It's quite interesting. I think you've both come, like, you're both quite religious, it seems. You've come out with a really good message, and, you know, it's helped a lot. It's good, like, going to religion or having an outlet a little bit to, I guess, turn to, and some guidance is quite nice. But I guess I'm seeing a bit of a difference where for you, Deb, it was misleading a little bit, where, you know, it's telling you this is good, you know, you being a good wife, as opposed to you, Rob, where it really actually helped you.
Yeah, that's true.
It's quite interesting.
It's true.
So
yeah,
both, you know, pros and cons to a
the
situation.
patriarchy is alive and well.
I think the difference there is, you know, the word, even religion, is it's really a man-made thing, right?
Sure.
Whereas, you know, when I cried out to God, I'm talking to my Father in heaven, who knows me better than I know myself, who made me.
Yeah.
And that's who I was. It wasn't about going to church. It wasn't about joining this group or that group, or, you know, cakes and tea. So I wasn't interested in religion, and I'm still not.
Yeah.
But I know that I needed help. And when you cry out to a father, any decent father, particularly the one, but even on this earth, that should help. If your child is screaming out to you for help and they don't know what to do, I mean, what father or mother is not going to attend to their children's needs in that kind of time for both? Both. More, in my opinion, these days for Deb's benefit than mine.
Yeah.
And that's the way I look at it. You know, it's great that we're both together, but my number one, the number one benefit I see is Deb is free from all that shit. You know, and it's a hell of a life. You wouldn't treat a dog like that. If you treated a dog like that, they'd arrest you.
Yeah.
You know?
So can we just skip forward a little bit? I guess I'm interested in exploring for this crisis point. You get to a stage. Now, some men can get to that stage and they can be at rock bottom and they can either make a choice to do something or they can do the opposite and continue on. You made a choice. So you talked about the meeting with the minister and then you talked about some counsellors. So which was the crisis point? Which is the one that suddenly said, hey, I need to...
You want to answer
For you,
that?
Rob?
What was the crisis
Your
point?
first counselling session.
Oh,
with John.
yeah, he was well,
he cut
was
to the
tough.
chase.
He was tough. Like, he was a DV pro.
So why did you go to him?
What about him?
Why did you go to him?
Well, I didn't choose him. I think you found him. One of our friends.
One of your friends.
One of friends, okay.
One of our friends.
What a great friend.
Sandy.
He may not have
Hey,
gone. I think
Sam.
it was Dave. Anyway.
Oh, anyway, he was found, and this guy challenged me on every level. And
Right.
I'll be honest, in the first 10 minutes, he's a bigger guy than me. I'm not that big, but I wanted to smash him, you know. And then I remember...
Why do you want to smash him?
because he was questioning me.
You didn't like that?
No, I didn't like
You've always
that.
been in power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, even with men,
Yeah.
you know. But I remember he got a piece of paper and he said, and he had a razor blade. Obviously it was sharp, just like from inside a shaver. And he just said, have you ever yelled at your wife? And I said, yeah. And he just cut it. He says, have you ever thrown things? I said, yep, cut it. And he kept asking me questions. I mean, it's the only test I've got 100% on in my life.
Oh,
and I didn't have to study, you know, for it. And it just kept hitting that paper and it just started falling to pieces. And he said, you know, you haven't gone and stabbed your wife or anything like that, but you're killing her one little, you know, cut at a time. So paper cutting her to death. And that was something. And then I remember the next thing, he went to his filing cabinet and top drawer, pulled out a pre-printed A4 piece of paper with what Deb mentioned, which was the Wheel of Violence.
Yep.
I mean, you can Google that. It's well known. So he's got a whole stack of them in there. And that pre-printed piece of paper represented me. I thought I was so special. I'm just garden variety.
Yep.
Garden variety abuser that he can just go to a filing cabinet and go, this is you. And you know what? If there was an abuser coming after me, that describes him as well, and the next guy, and the next guy. We're all garden variety, you know? Nothing special about it at all. So that really hit me as well. And then he said, I want you to take this piece of paper home and show it to your wife. I was like, yeah, no worries. Put it in my pocket. And I didn't show her.
It didn't come out straight away.
I didn't show her. I can't remember how it came out, but it did. And then as soon as that came out, that's when shit really hit the fan. Because the DV word came out, first time ever mentioned in our family. He mentioned it to me for the first time, and then somehow it came out of my pocket in front of Deb, and then Deb started to research, and she's a very good researcher.
So Deb, when that first came out, what was your immediate reaction?
Shock.
Yep.
Look, to be honest, I actually remember what he said. He said, look, this is what I've been doing to you for 15 years. It's called emotional abuse. I do not bash you with my fists, but I bash you with my emotions.
Yep.
That's what I do. And I'm like, what the heck's that? And I went to the computer and looked it up, and it talked about social control, financial control, emotional, verbal, the whole box and dice, not physical, but all the other forms. Yeah. And I was reading my life. I was reading my life on the computer, and I was, to be honest, really angry. I was like, this is my life. And because he'd always, as abusive men do, it's your fault I get angry. So I'd taken on this blame, like if I was better, he wouldn't get angry.
Gosh, yeah.
And I'd been doing that for 15 years, trying to improve, reading all the books that the pastor gives me and the counsellor gives me, trying to be better. It never helped because that's not the problem. Problem is control. And so I went downstairs and I said, Rob, this is not on.
Right.
This is wrong. I'm not doing it this way anymore. This is beyond wrong.
Understand that.
You know, and I said, I can't control you. Mm-hmm. You either change or you don't, but I am not doing it this way anymore. You either learn to love me and be with me respectfully or I'm out.
Yeah, that's really strong, Deb.
To me, it was just an absolute light bulb.
Yeah.
Shone on the toxicness of this relationship and how that's no person should have to do. And I was angry because it's like I'm trying my hardest to be as good as I can be, but this action, I said to him, I've been thinking this is my problem.
Yeah.
This is not my problem. This is your problem.
You deserve a lot better.
And then...
Yeah.
And did you then stay with Rob or do you have a separation?
I said... We did separate. We were in separate rooms, but he was willing to...
We had a big house at the time, so it was easy to be separate.
Because Rob was willing to do counselling, I said to him, if you change, if you address this, then maybe we have a chance. Like, not only do you need to stop controlling, but I need to have a process of recovery.
Yeah.
You know, and only at the end of all of that, if that happens, then we've got to see where we're at.
Yeah.
But for now, you do your thing. I need to go get help myself. I need to go get support.
Right.
And so we kind of were separate for quite a while doing our own work.
Yeah. Probably over a year.
Which really, by the way, don't go to couples counselling if you're in a domestic violence
really
relationship.
Interesting.
Do not.
No.
What makes you say that?
Because it's not a relationship problem. It's a power and control problem.
Mm.
Right. So did you
it's
guys
a power
try?
Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's
Levi.
right.
It's a power and control problem that affects the relationship.
But
it's not a relationship problem.
Sure.
That man could be with 30 women over 30 years and he would do exactly the same thing. So it's not a relationship problem. It's it's a us problem.
Yeah, I didn't actually think of it that way. That wouldn't have crossed my mind. My first instinct would have been like, if this was happening, couples counselling.
No.
Very interesting.
Because, as a therapist now, most modalities or couples, not all, but there's a presupposition, I guess, that when people come to therapy and they're in trouble, there is equal power.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if it's a power imbalance, it ain't going to work.
Yeah.
Because even counselling will be all about him going home and saying, look what, she told you to do this.
I guess just a bit more on that, hypothetically, because saying don't go to couples counselling.
It won't work.
However, would it be better to go to couples counselling than to not go to any counselling at all? Because maybe some people are
only if the counsellor understands this.
Yeah.
Because if she doesn't, if he or she doesn't, it might just be...
propel in the wrong way a little bit or go the wrong direction.
Like I'll give you an example. I've had women say, oh, yeah, we went to couple counselling and he complained he wasn't getting enough sex. Yeah. And the counsel was, you just need to go and buy some lingerie and please your husband.
No. You're lying to me, Deb.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Gosh, it's so bad.
A big,
These are people with degrees, right? They're educated.
Well, I don't remember who that person was, but that was their advice.
Gosh, that's terrible.
Rob, if I can just come back just to that point when you went to that counsellor, he took out that piece of paper and he shredded it, then he got another piece of paper that said, this is what you are, like all men. What was your sort of reaction at that point? Can you think back that far in terms of, was it, hey, I need to fix this, or I need to think about it, or no?
Well, my first thought was, I need to hide this piece of paper.
Right. For what reason?
Well, it was kind of like very telling.
Yep.
I mean, if you look at that will,
Yep.
it's not exactly a good character reference.
Yep.
You know, so I don't know. I can't remember how it came out. And when you saw it, you saw what happened.
Obviously, the conversation.
Right?
Yeah.
I kind of instinctively knew that shit's going to happen when this comes out. I think I must have volunteered it because I can't really. Once I know that something is true, then I almost don't have a choice about what I do.
Right.
If I don't know about it, I'm happy to go along with my dysfunction, even though I don't know it's a dysfunction. But when I know something's true, wouldn't you agree? In our life so far, in 35 years of marriage, when I know when the penny drops for something, then I don't care what it cost me.
Yeah.
And when I was in therapy, deep therapy, and I was going twice a week for like well over a year, and then even after that, but that was the intense bit because I knew if I didn't get better soon, like for real, not just get some strategies or go to anger management, that's a load of bullshit, right? I had to heal from stuff that was in me that I had to get out. And I've described it in that counselling and over, journaling and getting stuff out and so on. It was like one day came and I just started crying for like 4 hours. Couldn't be stopped. And it's like I gave birth to a demon, And once it was out, it was like, that was another major difference, It was like all this grief, all this grief came out of me that was in me, it was out. And then for some reason, that made everything clear.
Right.
It's like I've been walking around with a knife in my leg, and that's this pain. It's all I could think about. And if you got a knife in your leg, walking around doing business, doing this relationship, I mean, you're kind of agitated all the time and so on. But when it kind of came out, it came out of me. Yeah. But then it also came out of Deb.
Yeah. That's the point I was just thinking about.
Yeah.
Is because you were saying you didn't realise what was happening. Suddenly you're confronted with a piece of paper that says domestic violence. Suddenly, aha. So then you've got to research and all that. So suddenly you can now put some words to what you're experiencing. So I guess that sense that you sort of move through that and recover from it. I guess what's what I'm trying to say? How did you? Because that's going to affect your independence in lots of ways and your sense of self, I imagine. So how did you recover that over time?
Firstly, the support group was brilliant because it taught me the commonalities, which Rob said before on a printed piece of paper, that as I sat in that support group and realising this is common, this is not just me. Yeah. There's unfortunately a lot of women going through versions of this. Yeah. That was really strengthening because when you're in it, if the abusers manage to isolate you, then you don't really I often say to my clients, it's like being in a cult. Yeah. The cult leader isolates their members early on, and then they're the main input. Yeah. So you're mainly hearing a version of reality from one voice. Yeah. So if the abusive persons manage to isolate you from family and friends, you're going to maybe believe all the stuff you've heard. Yeah. When you start to go, oh no, that's just part of the pattern. Yeah. They all kind of all do that, and you're like, oh. So that was part of the healing. I also went through a process where, because like I'd say most women in my situation, during the abusive years, you have to suppress all your own feelings.
Sure.
It's not safe to have your feelings. So once he did stop controlling, I had this big kind of PTSD experience where I was hypervigilant and jumpy, but I was also processing a lot of emotion. And that was really healing, because I felt like, no, you know what? These feelings are an expression of what I've been through.
Yeah.
So that actually helped me regain myself, if that makes sense. I sort of like, I have a right to heal. This is actually good.
Yeah.
And over time I did heal. Yeah. It was messy, and it was, no one enjoys the process. But
Yeah.
It's interesting. I was just talking to a lady over the weekend, and she's going to feature on one of the other podcasts yet to come. So she's a victim. And the point that she was making very clearly is the whole effect everything had on her self-esteem.
absolutely.
Her self-esteem was just pushed down
Yeah.
and pushed down
Yeah.
and pushed down.
Yeah.
And it's taken her many years
Yeah.
to suddenly rise above it, to get to the stage where she's no longer a victim. She said, I'm a survivor.
Yeah.
And she's suddenly got to it. So I can see in terms of what you're saying,
Yeah.
exactly the same thing.
Yeah. Because when you understand emotional abuse, why does a perpetrator put you down and try to make you feel less than or diminish your sense of agency and selfhood? Because if you don't feel good about yourself, you're not going to leave them.
Yeah.
And if you don't feel good about yourself, you're easier to control. I mean, it really sounds so terrible to say that out loud, but that's what emotional abuse,
Reality,
that's what it does.
Yeah.
Because in my opinion, an abusive person doesn't have the self-esteem to keep a partner, so to speak. It's probably the wrong word, but a partner will stay with you if you love them properly, right? But if you don't have good self-esteem yourself, you don't know how to do that. Maybe you don't feel lovable, but you'll control. That's the only way you know how to keep your partner. To do that, you have to diminish her selfhood. It's terrible.
I guess, yeah, that's quite upsetting that's how it sometimes pans out. But I guess in saying that, upon reflection, Rob, what were some of the things that you changed? So during the time in that year you mentioned where you guys separated and did your own work, how did you help Deb feel better and more comfortable in the relationship? Because 15 years of abuse, there would have been a lot that you would have needed to do. Sorry, excuse me. What were some things that are so important when you're, I guess, helping the relationship grow in a positive way?
Well, it's a whole rewiring process, really. Maybe that's a superficial way to look at it, but I remember in that process that you're talking about, Levi, I was at the time, I think I was about, I'm not a big guy, but I was 102 kilos then, right? And in the process of this rewiring, I went down to 50 kilos.
Wow.
So I was vomiting. I was my rewiring. So let's just say I was 3 months into this therapy, right?
Yeah.
Deb would do something which was normal for a person to do, but not for an abuser, right? Yeah. So my whole body, my mind, emotionally, I wanted to control that situation.
Yeah.
So I had to stop, right? And I could even feel the electricity in my body. Yeah. It would just be literally I've stuck my hand in a PowerPoint, and it would just, and sometimes 4 a.m, I would just go crazy, and I called a friend who just coincidentally was a minister, but he would even sit with me in the car, 4 a.m.
Wow.
And I'd be letting it out there instead of here.
Yeah.
So I had some kind of boundary. I didn't even know what I was doing, to be honest with you. I just knew that if I lost control one more time with Deb, that's it.
Yeah.
It's over. So it was black and white for me. And then it's like a river, a river runs this way. It's been running this way for 15 years. And you want it to start to trickle this way. And it starts with a trickle. And it's damn hard because the groove here is, 10 feet deep.
Yeah.
Over here, it's just like it's a centimetre,
Yeah.
right? And it's just slowly starting. So that's all the rewiring.
Yeah.
And that's maybe one way to put it. And then, another way is I just had to look at, the indecency of what I was doing to another person, let alone it be my wife. I mean, she's like from heaven.
Absolutely.
Really. That's all I can see today. It's almost like we can't even relate to the people we were.
Yeah.
That's why you say, it takes courage to talk about it. Well, not really. It's like it's so out of us, gone, that it's almost like, yes, it's our story, but I'm just not that guy. There's no strategy. There's nothing I need to write down, nothing I need. The demon's out.
Yeah.
Right.
It's out. So getting it out was not easy because, it's like, vomiting an elephant.
Yeah.
There was a time, like, when Rob realised, no, this is wrong, and he owned it, took responsibility, but it's not usually that straightforward to like, okay, I'm going to, like, he did want to change, but what would happen is his anxiety would come up again, and he wasn't doing the big loud explosions like you said, but he would subtly still try to get the control back in those first few months. Just do it a bit more sneaky. Sneaky.
But you had your own journey, so you would have...
Well, for me, I was actually learning to trust my instincts and set boundaries. So, like, he might say, I can think of a really good example, because the whole trigger point was me working, right? Yeah. And then after a few months, Rob's like, Deb, I know I've really done wrong by you. I've treated you badly. I want to make it up for you. So if you leave the job and come home, then I'll just spend the rest of my life making it up to you. And then I sat there and I just got this funny feeling in my tummy. I was like, hang on a minute. I smell a rat.
Yeah.
And I got really good at just calling it out and said, actually, Rob, that was a manipulation.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be manipulated.
Right.
Yeah. Almost fooled me for a second.
Yeah.
Yeah. Almost had me.
Sounds good, doesn't
Yeah.
it? But my gut was going, hang on, this doesn't feel right,
Yeah.
So, but eventually the hooks came out. Eventually
Yeah.
the control stopped. I remember a particular moment where it stopped.
I guess that's great. It's very powerful. We do have one final question for you, and that is, what would you say to those maybe listening who might suspect that they could be an abuser? Do you have any words for them?
Well, I've had plenty of words for them over the years because I've been with them.
Yeah.
Maybe 150 of them.
Yeah.
And out of those 150, I'd say since 2008 till today, maybe 10 have taken the same journey. Numbers aren't good, right?
Not at all, yeah.
So I would say that, that if you're
Someone who just might have tendencies or unsure if this is, they could be thinking like this. What are your thoughts for people who are on the fence of where they might be?
I mean, what I'm really thinking is need to talk to boys. That's what I'm thinking. Because really, if you look at the numbers for men, they're not good. If you're an investor, that's not where you'd put your money.
Yeah.
But you put into boys, right? So no matter, they could have grown up on the street, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And they're not going to go to a good place, right? Is you invest in them because they might have crazy feelings and so on, like all kids, right? They're not regulated, most of them, but they change. They can change. And so you mentioned before about education, you know?
Yeah.
I think that's where the investment needs to be. If I made money from, which I don't, but if I made money from, people recovering from DV, I would do it with boys. I wouldn't do it with men.
Okay, that I agree. Where young men, boys would definitely be they soak up this information. However, we actually did a stat in one of our earlier podcasts that the age range is 30 to 49, where a lot of abuse comes through. So for that age range, or adults who might be having these tendencies, do you have anything for them?
Actually, can I just jump in there?
Actually, I do have an answer, but you go.
Rather than you answer that one, I'd like to get Deb's perspective, because in one of your books, you talk about men who acknowledge they have a problem, acknowledge they want to do something about it, go and seek help and advice, but only a very small percentage are able to change their behaviour. So it seems to me if we really want to do something, we need to get that, I think you mentioned 5%. We need to stretch that 5% to 10 to 15 to 20 to 25%. And I think for men, that's, to me, is where the challenge lies. How do we do that?
Look, I honestly do think it's challenging, because when you are in control, like if that's your modus operandi, it's to give up control is almost seems inconceivable to someone when they are in control. Yeah. And like Rob said earlier, it almost needs a crisis in their life for them to be shaken enough to go, maybe I need to do something different. But I mean, for me, it was also learning about what is a healthy relationship, and that's why it's great that you do stuff like this, because when you're in that dynamic, it may not be obvious that it's unhealthy, but I really don't know. You said you had an answer. It's a tough one.
You remember? I remember one day in particular. I mean, we've had a few of these days, but one in particular, I was driving, and that day I was so bad that I thought this is going to be my last day. Right? So I'm driving. I put on a CD in the car. I didn't even know what the CD was, right? I just put it in, and there was a guy speaking, and he was just talking to a crowd of people, and I remember what the CD was called. It was called Battles and Victories, right? I didn't even know what it was. Put it in, and he just said, I'm driving along, probably the worst day of my life, and by the way, I'm not comparing my pain to yours, I'm just saying I had pain, but compared to Deb's, it was, I had a picnic, because if it was the other way around, 15 years, there's no way on earth I would put up with that.
Yeah.
Not for a week.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's another story. But anyway, he said, and right then we were separated. I was still blaming all that. There's still a lot of dysfunction. And the guy on the CD said, do you love your children? And I'm driving along thinking, of course I do. Our kids were like young teens. I said, yeah. And he goes, would you die for your children? I said, yeah. And he said, this is Australia. You're never probably going to have to die for your children. He goes, however, if you're willing to die for them, why won't you change for them? Wow. And that hit something in me because, and which relates to a lot of the men that I speak to that you just can't get through to because they're hating their wives at the moment because they're the cause of all this. I mean, they're not, but I'm just saying that's what they're painting. That's what we want it to be. However, when I say, would you speak like that to your daughter, to your 6-year-old daughter? All of a sudden they go, oh no, not to.
I could never.
Not to my daughter.
No
all
way.
Of a sudden, compassion comes like that, right? Not to a partner, right? However, a daughter, they're like, oh no, I wouldn't dream of that. And I'm like, what's the difference, mate? As a matter of fact, you should be looking after your wife even more than your daughter, but somehow that kind of love resonates with an abuser because the partner doesn't at that stage.
Partner's the enemy.
Partner's the enemy. They're to blame for everything. So that is an entry point, in my opinion, of compassion. And then start talking to them about, well, you know, you just felt that, you know. And I was talking to another couple of different coaching that I'm doing, but there was a father and son, you know, they were estranged for many years, and we'll finish up, right? But anyway, they didn't understand one another and so on. And one was an old, 70-year-old farmer. The other guy was living interstate. He's got kids. And cut a long story short, I was trying to get through to, because the son told me what was going on. The father didn't really look after him, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, and I was talking to the father, and he said, oh, no, he just couldn't find any empathy. And I said, what about when your son, Chris, was 6 years old? Would you treat him like that? He goes, no, he's just a little fella. He's just a little fella, right? And I said, yeah. I said, exactly. So you wouldn't do it, right? You wouldn't speak to him the way you're speaking to him right now and treat him that way. No, he's just a little fella. He's vulnerable. He needs looking after. I said, he's 32. He still needs the same stuff, you know? And I wrote a little ebook called My Little Fella, you know? And I wrote it for him. And I sent it to him and to the son, you know? And he rang me, thanked me, and so on. And it was a book about how they can get back together. And not just, forgive each other, talk about what was missing, what's not, and restore. And I think that is an entry point for abusers, because even though we're kind of like animals, right? That a giraffe does what a giraffe does and an abuser does. Even the most ferocious animal on the planet will protect their young. Yeah. And that's still love. So if you can tap into any kind of love, that's usually the best place to start.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great spot to start. And unfortunately, it's going to be a place we're going to finish today because we've run way over time, I guess, in terms of what your expectation was. I know I got the message to wind it up about 25 minutes ago.
So you can chop it. You can give it a big chop.
No. Look, the conversation has been fantastic. Thank you for that. Rob, your passion to tell your story is evident, and we appreciate that. Deb, as a victim, you have a unique insight, and you gave us a lot of that today. So I'm hoping for you guys that are sort of sitting at home watching this, that you're going to find that there will be a message for you. There'll be something throughout the last 45 minutes or whatever that you can take away and learn from. And hopefully love is going to be first and foremost, and the need for that right at the beginning. So thank you. I really appreciate your time. So
it was almost fun.
We'll try and make it fun next time. Maybe we should run around the block for a few times first. Guys, if you're sort of listening home, I just want to talk about our next episode. So that's coming up shortly. And our next one is talking to two victims. So like Deb, we heard Deb's story today, but these are going to be more in depth about what they experienced, so just by themselves. And I guess there's a phrase that I heard along the way somewhere that I think is about what their conversation is about, is that, I'll need to read it, I need to get it right. Not all disrespect leads to violence against women, but all violence against women begins with disrespect. Yeah, it's a very powerful statement.
Yeah.
And that's what that's going to be about. So thank you again for your time. Levi, I'm finished for the day. I'm Warren, by the way. I didn't introduce myself at the beginning, but I'll do it at the end, and I look forward to catch up with you guys sometime soon. Thanks, Levi.
Thank you, Warren. I really appreciate that. And Rob and Deb, for your time. I really appreciate your time talking to us and sharing your experience. For those listening, we really appreciate you tuning in. I guess one thing that I learned today was the analogy that Deb had mentioned of the boiling frog. You never really know what you're getting into. You go in and everything seems fine, and then before it's too late, that water's boiling and you're in a situation you do not want to be in. So I guess it's important to recognize these signs. Again, thank you for tuning in. If you have any questions, as always, you can contact us at goodmenproject@hca.org.au. That's goodmenproject@hca.org.au. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us. This podcast is for information and educational purposes. The views expressed by the host and their guests are their own views and do not constitute professional advice. Listeners should consult professionals for specific advice tailored to their needs. We make no representation or warranties concerning the accuracy, completeness, or applicability of the information in the podcast.